Hello everybody, it's Bobby again with Madness Labs, and we're back for episode 6 of our Madness casts. Just wanted to start out by saying how awesome this whole thing has been. We've really enjoyed kind of connecting with you guys and oh, let me turn myself down here. So we've really enjoyed getting out there and connecting with you guys, and really kind of taking this in a direction that makes sense for you. And also, what has been really neat about this is we've kind of used it ourselves as a bit of a testing ground to see, to play around with some new technologies, to share that kind of tinkering with you guys, and then also to kind of get your guys' feedback on it so that we can kind of keep moving in a certain direction. So there was a lot of interest in Firebase and using Firestore, their new beta product, in order to actually hook up like live data to your application using Stencil and Ionic Core. But this week, Webonics or AJ it has basically asked if we could get into offline data and making an application that is offline first. And more than happily, we dove in and looked at how to actually accomplish that. And what was really neat was that it's actually a lot simpler, as that's kind of how they built it from the ground up to work. So with very little modifications to our code that we already had last week, we're going to be able to get Firestore working offline without any issues. So, I'm going to do the normal beginning of video thing. If this series has been helpful, or even if you just like the Jigglypuff hat that my wife got me for Christmas, if either of those are the case, then please subscribe and consider heading on over to our Patreon and supporting us there so that we can scale more of these learning resources for you guys. That being said, hopefully you guys can hear me, and if you want to, please feel free to drop a chat message, and either myself or my lovely wife will get back to you guys. As always, keep the love coming on Twitter. We really appreciate it. So let me now just jump right in. Oh, there's the top of my head. Adjustments. Okay. So here we have the project, and we've pretty much left off at the same spot. If you watched our Q&A video, you'll know that we actually reached out to AJ and answered one of the questions he had about how the rendering kind of works inside of a Stencil component, why I chose to not use the traditional kind of input binding to put those items in state. So we had answered that question. Other than that, our code really hasn't changed much. And actually, I have a problem with mine. Actually, this is why we started the video a little late. I have a problem with mine actually just completely not showing up right. It looks like from the console here, I can kind of see that I'm getting these aired out vars, which I'm guessing that has to do with something to do with Ionic. So I actually cloned down their newest version of their Ionic PWA toolkit, and I've actually just been kind of playing with that a little bit, trying to see if I can figure out what the difference between the code that we have versus what they have. But I haven't been able to find anything too damning thus far. It looks like I've pretty much got everything set up, but I'm going to keep looking at it. So that's kind of where we're at right now. And then after we're done, like I said, once I get this up and running again, figure out what I'm doing wrong like an idiot, we'll actually get into Firebase Firestore offline data. And what's really neat about this is that, again, it's kind of just a small tweak to when we initialize our database. And then that enables it so that we can actually use it across our application. So every time we go and get data from the database, it's going to handle behind the scenes storing that data on the device, which is super handy, because we've been doing something similar with Firebase, regular Firebase, and we had to write all of that stuff and write all of the code that checks for internet connection, or goes between the actual data and the application. And this just kind of does it behind the scenes without you having to do much of anything. So that's pretty awesome. But right now I'm in Brokenville, so I gotta figure out what is going on here. Hello to everyone watching at home. Hopefully you can see my head somewhere in this floating triangle. or rectangle. Okay. So I'm going to try like the last ditch effort, and I'm just going to blow away my node modules folder and then do an npm install and see if that takes care of it, because it looks like my package versus their package, hey, looks fairly similar. Looks like they're about the same, and my config is pretty much the same as well. So I'm not quite sure where the disconnect is. So just to make 100% sure, I will just rip this right out. Let's just do that. This is the joy of coming to watch Madness Labs code. We're just gonna show you all of the terrible bits that everyone else cuts out and leaves on the cutting room floor. Okay, so restarting my dev server, and so something is still just like terribly, terribly wrong with what I've done somewhere. What is the question? So the other change, if you guys are experiencing something along these lines, okay, cool, we're still streaming. Okay, so last week in the last Madness cast, we upgraded our version of Stencil, the compiler, as well as the Ionic Core components. And so they did a little bit of a change in their config. They automatically can now figure out all of your bundling. So we don't have to actually worry about defining those inside of our config. And then we also had to go inside of our app, myapp.tsx, and we have to actually add these two imports at the top. So now Stencil is more leaning towards, instead of you having to go about setting these things up, as far as like inside of your configuration, you can then just do the standard importing of a library like Ionic Core or Stencil Core. But again, I'm still experiencing some kind of an issue with mine versus theirs. And I'm going to try this again. Just rip all of our code out and paste theirs in, because they obviously know what they are doing. And I am missing something. And if somebody is sitting at home right now watching me flail and like is enjoying it, well then that's good too. I'm also good for a little bit of humiliation. I don't understand. These people want to see Firestore. We have no time for this debuggery. All right. Let's see. I mean, this is a stretch, but maybe there's a difference in the index file? Question mark? Justin, help! Oh. Yeah. Well, I mean, worst comes to worst, I will ditch this temporarily and jump on over to this other Ionic PWA project, as it is working. But that would just suck. Thanks for tuning into the Madness cast. Here's our broken ass application. Even we can't fix it. Jeez. Not gonna lie, I'm not seeing it. I know I'm an idiot, but I'm just not seeing how. Please comment to save me. Everything's up to date. I've blown away my components file. I don't understand. Do I need to blow away my package.lock file? I swear if it's a caching issue, I'm gonna be pissed. Okay, well, it's not a caching issue, at least that. Why don't you love me, Ionic Core? Why? Resource interpreted as style sheet, but transferred with MIME type of text HTML. Well, you know what? These are live casts, right? Things go wrong. Let's just figure it out. It's a stretch, guys. It's a stretch, but I'm gonna try it. Wah wah wah. Welcome to being a developer. You will try a million things and none of them will work. And then somebody will make a comment and say, "Oh, did you try this?" And you will feel like a complete ass. All right, well, I'm not going to dwell on it too much. I mean, most of this project is pretty stock at the moment. I still would like to show off Firestore, and I don't know if I can wait for me to figure out what the heck is different between this and an identical repo. I'm not seeing it. I'm just not seeing it. Is one of my apps messed up? I just wish somebody would tell me what's wrong. Does he have profile? Yeah, most of this is stock, so I mean. All right, well. All right, welcome to the worst started Madness cast yet. Okay. We're going to start in a brand new project. So this is the standard Ionic PWA toolkit. I literally just cloned it down before the video. And I guess what we're gonna do is just start this guy up and then we'll run through kind of what I did last week on setting up Firebase, since we're already familiar with it. And I will then kind of show you where we should kind of take that next. So let's start this guy back up. And then, so last week we had implemented the Firebase script to initialize the database on the actual index page. This is okay, I guess. It's, again, I generally try to take these things and put them inside of some kind of a service, and then just kind of initialize them, and then we can kind of keep all this code separate and you know, not baked into the page. But I think that's what we'll do right now on this application. So I'm going to jump into, first off, I'm going to jump into their index. And again, we need to grab the Firestore and Firebase script tags. And then we're going to go ahead and slap these guys right. Oh my God, I cannot get this camera to sit right. Bear with me today, YouTube. Okay. Okay. So, so first off, just grab those script tags and place those guys inside of the index.html. And, you know, best case scenario, or like, I guess worst case scenario, I break this by implementing all this code, and I figure out what is broken on the other app. So I mean, win-win. So again, rather than actually using our script tag like we have here, I'm going to take this code, and instead I'm going to put this inside of my my app.tsx. And so down here, probably on my component did load, I'm going to go ahead and put my Firebase code. And actually, no, I'm not. I'm actually going to make a service. So they have a global file. Let's see, assets, helpers. I don't know. I generally like to call this services. So I'm going to make a new folder called services. And then I'm going to make me a new file. And we're going to call this... Oh, naming schemas are hard. Naming schemas are hard. Okay, let's see, what do we do? Let's do database, I guess. TS. Yeah. Yeah, we're going to call it database. So that's happening. I felt like DB was just a little too common. Okay, so now let's take this Firebase code. And remember, we have to actually declare a var in our typings so that we can get these red underlines for Firebase to go away. And it's because we're not actually including the Firebase library via like doing an import on ES6. We're instead just kind of defining it, and it's being used directly from from the DOM on these or out of these Firebase.js and Firebase Firestore files. So we have to actually tell Typescript that these variables exist and it's okay, please don't break. So that's what we need to do. Let's go ahead and make an export. Export. No, yeah, that's right. Class. Database. And in the constructor. So the constructor function, if you're not familiar with ES6, the constructor is just something that loads automatically when this class gets initiated. So whenever it's called, whatever's in this constructor will run. And so again, like I said, I need to actually do my declare var Firebase. And I probably could also install the typings. That would probably be another way to go about doing that. So I think if you install like @types Firebase possibly it would go away. Let's try it. So luckily they've done it used to be you had to have a specific command line tool to do typings, like to install typings. It was called definitely typed. TSD I think is what it was. And now it's kind of just baked into Node. So let me see if I can do types Firebase. See if I can find it. Firebase client. This might be it. This package contains type definition for Firebase client. Firebase client. Yeah, this is probably going to do it. So again, if you're new to TypeScript and how typings work, basically we need to have like definition files that tell all the different variables and what they are, and that way that tells the compiler what to expect, and so that way it won't actually compile code that is broken or incorrectly hooked up. It also will give you better type ahead, or like the autocomplete as you type. So all of those things like make you a much happier developer. So these typings were for a while put into like a separate repository, and they were kind of hard to get to like share between projects. Now they've got a nice little @types npm repo, and it's got all of the different typings underneath it, at least from definitely typed. And then as you've seen throughout the other videos, the rest of the typings, like as you make them inside of your components and in your services, as you apply those typings and you import those into other files, they kind of figure out the type aheads and all that stuff. So super, super cool. It looks like I still am getting errors. So even though I installed that typing library, it looks like I might still be getting some problems. And let me try to install regular Firebase as well. Okay, so this code here is what's going to initialize Firebase. So when we call this database class, it's going to go and, yeah, I'm just going to do it the lazy way. And again, I could probably try to use the, I think they do actually have an importable version of Firebase. I might be incorrect on that, but I think they do. I haven't tried it out yet myself. Generally, I've always followed this kind of paradigm just because that's how it's always been. But yeah, if you have any experience with that, please leave a comment. Let me know how like using the actual importable library works, if they even have one. I could be, like I said, I could be blowing smoke. Okay, so this is what initializes our Firestore. So we just need to like call this inside of our actual application so that we can get that to start. So let's go ahead and call that on our component did load. Actually, we can even call it sooner. If we import database, my spelling, from // services / database. Okay, so now what we can do is basically call this whenever my app launches, and it'll automatically initiate Firebase. So we can do something like this. Database is going to be database, and then we're going to say equals new database. We don't even need those actually. So what's really neat about this is a really clean way to implement a service, or like kind of inject that service into the page. So right here inside of the class, we just define something being a property on the class called database. It's going to use the typings from database, which is the class itself. And then we're going to then instantiate it and set it equal to that variable right off the bat whenever this class is called. So when this component loads, in this case when the app loads, we should automatically see it connect to Firebase. And just so that we can actually see it on the screen, let's do a console log and just say, hello, your Firebase is ready. Okay, so whenever this, am I still running? Oh, RDB. Oh yeah, DB is called but never used, which is cool. Let's just console log our DB out. Make sure we're connected. Okay, so now once we refresh here, are we hooked up anymore? Oh, it'd help if I saved. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now you can see hello from your Firebase is ready, and then we can see it did in fact get initialized, and we have our Firebase stuff ready to go. So cool. So now we've initialized our database, and we're not putting it all up in our head of our document. We are now using a nice service, database service, that's going to worry about carrying all this stuff around. So next we're going to want our different methods. So from the last video, in the last video we had this myapp.tsx, or sorry, not myapp, we had apps.tsx, brilliant naming. Okay, so we've got this guy, and this is what gets the apps, and then this is the submit. I'm kind of refreshing myself here because it's been a week since I looked at this code. Okay, so this is where we submit. And last week I had shown how to actually get and make a service, much like what we're doing now. So I'm actually making a service to go about getting back all of the list of apps, as well as adding a new app. And so I was using a service to do that. Now I would say, again, this kind of gets back to what I was kind of advocating as the best or my preferred way, is kind of making a service for each thing. So like apps, in this case, the apps page with all the apps, that being a service, and then also having a database service like the one that I'm building now. And that way you've got one layer that kind of is in charge of just talking with the database. And then you've got another layer that is in charge of talking to the database about apps, about some group of data, some noun. And then that way you actually, if you want to change out the database layer or change just how the app talks to the database, you can change any one of those without having to worry about having them all kind of tied up. A lot of developers, when you first start out, you kind of go into like maybe your apps page, and you would just wire everything up in here with Firebase and with all your different libraries. And whereas you get somewhere really quickly, you get something together, down the road when you need to change things or when you need to update something, it gets really difficult to kind of unwire things. So making sure that from the start of your projects that you really think about what you're really scaling, what you're trying to accomplish, and then setting up contracts or services in this case in between different things, so that way you're never kind of tying yourself into one solution, because who knows, Firestore is in beta, it could eventually shut down, and you would have to find your own Mongodb or something like that. And if you had Firebase declarations across your entire application, it's going to take you a really long time to refactor and to get everything set up. But if you have one thing that talks to Firestore and does all of your data transferring, one thing that talks to the database about apps and stuff like that, you're minimizing the chances that, like, if one of those things goes down or if one of those has a problem, that you're going to have to go through all of your application to change things. Hey baby, can you come get this soapbox? I need to step down. I need to step down off this soapbox. I've got a nice soapbox here. Okay, lecture over / rant done. Again, hello to anyone watching, coming in and seeing my rant about service structure on your applications. So we've got Firebase in our new application. We've got Firebase connected. We're connected to Firestore, and we can see that our database is ready. So the difference here, when we start to do offline capabilities, the difference when we're doing our initialization is very minimal. All we have to do is kind of, when we initialize our Firestore, we just need to pass in this extra .enable persistence. And that's going to actually then tell Firebase that we want it to save the data locally. And then it takes care of, like, when we do a query or something, saving that data to the actual device. And then that way we can actually then call for it when it's offline and we don't have any issues. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll just copy their little lump of code here, and we will paste it right there. Okay, so now we have the pretty much same example running, except this time with persistence. So let's go ahead and just save that and see it working in the browser. That was my luck today. Okay, so we still see the same results. This time we have the enable persistence, and we're just going to have to, believe in the power of it being there and it working. One thing I'm going to change here is I'm going to change these into binding functions here with my nice little fat arrow, so we can have access to this. Okay, so now what we probably want to do is let's save this Firebase Firestore. Let's save that to something on our class here so that we can access it inside of other methods, or maybe even from the outside. So let's call it instance is usually what okay, so we want to say instance, and in this case it's going to be any. Again, I'm only getting a little nervous. Like, I've been getting more and more into TypeScript and writing typings, especially here recently. We've started using them on kind of front end and back end, and then had like documentation tools that we've kind of looked into that like run documentation based off of your typings and stuff like that. So not having the typings here is actually like making me really nervous. Like I really want them now. So if you're new to like TypeScript and typings and all this stuff, really give it a good thought and like really do a deep dive on it, because it's fascinating. Like once you get it all set up, it's amazing how life-changing it really is. It's crazy to think like that, you know, you can start in a language like JavaScript that has there's no confines of kind of what you can do, or no guide to like really what there is. There's just a type ahead that tells you all the different methods. And then now you can kind of use TypeScript and know exactly the 4 or 5 different methods that you have, the list of properties, what their values are probably going to be. All of that data, it's a pain to set up, but I guarantee you the payoff is huge. We've just noticed like a night and day difference between like the quality of our code, as well as like it makes you really think it out, much like test-driven development makes you think out something before you get there. You kind of have that same thing happening once you start writing typings, because you're really being thoughtful as to why you're writing a code, or why there's a variable there, what each one of those does. And so probably in one of these future casts here in the next week or two, I'll probably get into like how we've done our documentation and all the different changes we've been making there, because it's been super exciting to really play around with using typings on the front end and the back end. So yeah, I might do a video on that at some point, maybe episode 7, maybe. Okay, so let's get moving here, because I am obviously just really dragging on this cast. So instead, we're going to save, instead of to a variable db, we're going to set this.instance equal to our database instance. So this is going to give us access to raw Firebase.Firestore. So all of our Firebase Firestore stuff, or DB stuff from the example, we now can just replace with our this.instance. And this is going to, again, let us access this from the outside, like if we're hooking something up in our controller or something like that, we can access the database instance and talk directly to Firebase and do something custom. But again, you want to try to keep most of that stuff minimal. So that way, if you decided to change Firebase for realm.io or something like that, you would then just change out this database.ts service file with one that binds all the same methods, but binds them to realm.io or whatever other service you want to use instead. You don't want a whole bunch of stuff that talks to the instance, that talks to the raw database tool, because again, just refactoring and taking it out and getting another service is going to be a pain. Okay, so now we've got our instance. So now let's actually set up a query like what we have on our other application here. So like, let's get the db.collection.get. And actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to copy this whole app service. Let's just copy this guy, and let's go over here in our services, and let's make an app. And I forgot, I actually use uppercase on these guys. Generally, services I try to make with uppercase letters, because they're classes, and classes always start with an uppercase letter. So usually I name my files the same way. And it also gives me a good distinct difference between like my component files and my services. Okay, so I've got my database service, and I've also got an app service now. So I'm going to paste this in here. Cool. So now we've got our app service, and we've got an all, and that's going to do db collection apps.get. Okay, so what we would do differently here is, remember db, we were declaring this because db was the Firestore instance that we were using. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to import our database from /database. It's capital D database now. That's capital D database to you. All right, database. All right. Okay, it's giving us errors. That's fine. So we're going to do that same thing that we did in our other class. So we're going to go here at the top, and we're going to say database is going to be a database, and it's going to equal a new database. And so that's going to call the database class, which again, that's going to fire the constructor if it hasn't already been instantiated, which in this case, most likely it's already been called from inside of our myapp.tsx. So it's already been called, so it should already be running at that point. So it would just be about like getting this instance now. It shouldn't refire the same thing over again. At least I would hope not. Okay, so now inside of here, we can access our database properties. So we can access our instance, which we're going to do. We're going to say this.database.instance. And notice, see, this.database. So once I do dot, notice the only thing I have on here is instance, because that's the only thing that we have inside of our file. And again, this is the kind of benefit that Typescript, as well as using ES6 imports, that's what this is going to get us. It's going to get us really accurate type of heads. So maybe you knew that, maybe you didn't, I don't know, but super, super helpful. And because it doesn't know what instance is, so like this is another great case of like if I had Firebase typings and I implemented them here, which I actually can. I don't know why I'm saying if I could. I am so dumb sometimes, guys. I'm so dumb. I wish you guys would call me out in the comments and be like, you're an idiot. And then I'd be like, agreed. Okay. Firebase from @types Firebase. Oh yeah, @types Firebase client. Consider okay, if you want me to. Can I do star? Can I add Firebase? No, that's not right. I can figure this out, guys, I promise. Oh, okay. You know what, guys? You know what? Let's just look up on a quick example here. Check out their package. Giggity. Okay, so it is just Firebase. Right? Yeah. Okay, so I think I might have been overcomplicating this. I think I can just npm install --save Firebase, and it might do all of this for me, and I'm just being a big derp. There's a very good possibility. And I'm out of coffee. What fresh hell is this? Okay. You're supposed to work now. Okay, let's try our import again. Import Firebase. All right, so if that worked, yes, okay. So if that worked, I think we can actually go inside of our index page and we can remove these guys out altogether. I don't know why I didn't do this sooner. Jeez. Cheese and crackers, guys. Cheese and crackers. Cheese its crust. All right. So let's just make sure this even works. So let's do npm start. Let's get this fired back up. But if all went well, then we should have the same exact thing working. But this time, we'll have all the beauty of Initialized app is not exported by module. Firestore is not exported. No, this is what I was afraid of. Okay. Did I do it wrong, Firebase? Did I do it wrong? Star as Firebase from Firebase. All right, I see down here it says something about Firebase app import loads the Firebase namespace along with all of its types information. Firebase Initialized app is not exported by node modules. I'm hoping there are warnings that they're not breaking anything. Let's check it out. Undefined is not a function. That's good. That's always good errors to have. Everything is broken this week, guys. It's so terribly sad. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is I think that imports just the typings, which would be good. And then I will actually put these script tags back on the main page. And it's still broken. Okay. See, I got happy and then now I'm sad again. I can't have my lovely cake and eat it too. So yeah, I'm still running into some issues with getting Firebase importing. And if you guys have a good solution for this, please let me know on Twitter or in the comment section, because this has been something that like I would love to get working. Because again, as you saw there for a second, so if I take this guy out, and sorry for like just dragging you guys along on a little bit of a quest here. Again, a lot of this stuff, Firestore is really something that we've just started playing with. We've built some little examples with it when it first went into beta, but we've never really gotten into like writing services and stuff around it. So we're kind of at the same time that we've used a lot of this stuff, we're kind of playing around with like how to actually structure and scale these things up. And how we do them, much like what we do with the current Firebase. So it's a little bit of a trial and error thing, but hopefully this is beneficial to you guys. My God, I'm like terrible at keeping my head in the Pokedex tonight. Okay, so now we've got our instance, we've got our app hooked up, and again, like I said, if we could, I would love to import my Firebase rather than including it in the index page. But at this point in time, like I can't seem to get them working. And as you can see, like I said, once you have your typings working, it knows immediately Firebase dot, oh, well, you have to actually have the entire library. So you can see that like once we get the Firebase library actually included, we then get all the typings. We get the methods that come with it, as well as, yeah, see, it just does not like being imported. So we get all of the cool typings here. So we can say Firebase dot database URL, Firestore. So it knows all of the different things that we can do with it, which is super helpful. But alas, when you can't, you can declare a var in TypeScript and the compiler will pretty much just ignore it because it will be defined at least. Cool. So now, again, we've got a app controller, app service, and our app service now connects into our database service, and then its only job is to hand back data about a list of apps. And again, we would probably do something where we'd write like a get method on our database, and then put all of this logic inside of the actual database itself, the database service. And again, that's just so that we're not writing a whole bunch of stuff directly that has to do with Firebase. We're writing things that have to do with a database. And then if we switch them out at any points, then it will be a lot easier to do. So cool, now we've got that hooked up. Let's try out the offline functionality. So now that we've got like a service hooked up, I'm going to go into my app.tsx, and then here at the top, I'm going to import my, actually no, let's go into app.home. Let's go in our home page and let's say like, oops, no, stop clicking. So let's go into our home page and let's import our app service. So we're going to do app from /services app. And I think I called it app service, right? Yeah, and I need to do that same thing. Coding is all about consistency. Service. Okay. Okay. Database. Database service. Okay, so now I've replaced all of my database with database service because that's what I've decided to do, and I need to stick with it. Okay, app service, and down here I'm going to call app equals new, app service. So my typing and then new app service. Cool, so now I've got my apps, so now let's go ahead, or my app service. So now let's go ahead and do a component will load. And inside of here, let's do this .app.all. Yay, typings. .then. And then our function for when we are done. Oops. Oh, I must be crazy. Okay. Okay, so we're going to go get all of our apps. Then we're going to... God, Bobby, just get your shit together. Okay, so I'm going to go get all my apps. Then let's go ahead and say data. Okay, so then let's just console log our list of apps. We should be able to see fairly shortly. Oh no. All right, it's giving us an error. It says that collection apps get So let's just try this manually really quickly. It says, let's see, duplicate app message Firebase app name default already exists. Okay, so it looks like it might be trying to instantiate it multiple times. Show. We probably don't need to call it. Actually, no, what we'll do is we need to say let's check. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can check if Firebase is initialized. And look, there's our error. There we go. So Firebase apps.length, Firebase initialize. Look at that. Thank you, Google. And, oh, hello, Yasin. Thanks for joining us, man. Hopefully this is helpful. I've been a little all over the board here on this cast, opened up with some errors, and couldn't get my Madness Labs PWA repo up and running for some reason, so I'm still looking into that, but decided to kind of push forward and keep doing some Firebase Firestore offline integration. And right now what I kind of ran into is I've got the Firebase Firestore is initializing multiple times just because I've put it into this database service, and it's getting called inside of our app home now. When I call the app service, it's then calling the database service, and so it's initializing itself multiple times, which is what we don't want. But easy fix. All we have to do is slap this little if statement around it, and we should be good to go. So let's try that out. Hope I switch my window. Collection of undefined. Okay, so we're initializing, then we're waiting for this to happen. Let's see. So most likely what's going on here is inside of our app, when this guy is called, this instance isn't finished yet. So I'm sure I could test this theory by doing like a set timeout. And let's just set a timeout for like function, and then let's set a timeout for like 3 seconds. That should be like way more than enough time. So I'm gonna set a timeout here and just see if like my instance just isn't quite ready and set yet, and that's why I'm getting this error. Oh, yeah, I have to return a promise from this guy, duh. Okay. So then what I want to do is let's do new promise. So yeah, return new promise. And it's going to be a function. Yeah, resolve reject. So if you haven't worked with promises yet, it's pretty cool. I think Angular 2 has a resolve library that works a lot better. It lets you to kind of like just keep passing stuff off incrementally and then close the connection at any point in time, which is a lot better than a promise, because promise is kind of like either it works or it doesn't. It's very binary. But in this case, I'm just going to return a promise because that's what this guy is. This database collection is a promise. So I'm just going to return a promise here, and that way I can do my set timeout. Okay, so explanation complete, back to coding. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a set timeout here. And then once we're done, yeah, yeah, once we're done, I need to resolve. So let's say .then resolve, and then let's get the data. Okay, so now it should be pretty much hooked up the same way, except now there's like a 3-second delay before it goes and gets the data. And if I'm right, God, you're so picky. Here's a cool trick that I learned. So again, in the new version of the TypeScript compiler, they kind of take and read well, they've changed something from being a warning, which it used to be a warning if you were using, or if you were defining variables and stuff like that, or libraries, and you weren't using it inside of your actual page. It used to just warn you. But now it actually will completely error out if you have some unnecessary variables defined. So it's a way to get around this is the TypeScript compiler allows you to throw a underscore before a variable name, and that will allow you to actually define a variable and then not use it. And so that's what I've done here. Again, I could probably just get rid of this. It's not a huge deal. But their justification for it, and I totally agree with them, is that if you're importing a library and you're not using it, then you're just adding bloat to your application, which is not something that you want to do. So, okay, so in this case, I've got this worked out. Let's go ahead and save this and see if we can get it working. And then we'll figure out what we can do to get around our actual database being ready. No. Looks like collection is undefined. So let's head back to our documentation and make sure that I'm not an idiot, because it's very probable that I am. db.collection. So database instance.collection should be the same thing. This new database service. Database consistency. Okay, let's see. Set timeout. This is, so we know it's not. Well, at least I think it's not a timeout issue. It's nothing a timeout can fix, at least. Inspect here. Yep, so it's nothing our timeout is fixing. So that is both good and bad news. So good news is that we don't need any of this extra code. We can just take it back to where it was. Bad news is it's not defined there, governor. All right. So let's do a console log here of this.database and see what we're getting back. So, as I've said, and as I will say a million times, when in doubt, console log it out. So here I can see I've got a database service and I have no freaking instance. So why don't we have an instance? So if app's length equals 0, initialize my Firebase app. So let's do something smarter, because I need to be smarter, obviously. Let's say if this dot instance, no instance. So now I'm going to say if there is no instance, so we haven't set any instance yet, then it won't run. And if it okay. Maybe if I go in here and I stop it from firing, because I really don't need it to initialize in our application. I really just need it to initialize inside of our app service. Okay. Oh, let's see. Yeah, okay. Okay, I see the error of my ways here. So I probably just need to do like dependency injection here rather than like reinstantiating this class, recalling it over and over again. I probably need to actually just pass it in. So in this case, what I need to do is in my app, I'm going to set database equal to database, but we're going to say, we're going to make our constructor, and then we're going to actually take in database. Database service, this, that. Okay, so this is a little different. What this is going to do is it's going to, instead of calling a new instance of the database service, we're instead going to pass this into the constructor when we initialize the app. So this is going to be a little different. So what we're going to need to do is go into our app home. Let's import our app service and our database service. And new app service, and then we want to do new, no, not new database service. Oh my God, why am I brain farting so hard on this right now? God, this is terrible. It has been a really, really long week for us here at Madness Labs. Our last couple weeks have been crazy chaotic. So again, bear with me on this cast as we're kind of still figuring out how these tools scale up to a lot of the different stuff that we're doing. So again, another thing about this cast series is that it's very raw, and we're trying to figure things out as much as kind of show you guys what we've actually figured out. So again, if you guys have any comments, suggestions, or anything like that, please feel free to leave them in the comments. Follow us on Twitter at Madness Labs. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Madness Labs to get more video content and tutorials and things like that. And then, as always, we have a Patreon that we are actually trying to get funded so that we can actually do a nice Skillshare course where we take a lot of these concepts that we've dove into over the last couple weeks, or I guess years now since we've been on YouTube. We're going to take a lot of those concepts and try to actually script them and make them into a very vetted out Stencil web component course. So head on over to our Patreon and chip in a couple bucks there in order to help us get that going. But back to the task at hand here. So we've got our app service and now our database service. And I'm trying to pass my database service into my app service after it's initialized. No, that just doesn't seem right. Okay. Now, after that brief advertisement, now I have my wits back about me. Okay, so let's leave this as it is. App service. And then in our app service, let's redo this because this was right. I'm telling you guys, trying to set stuff up the right way. It's always a pain. Lots of thinking, lots of thinking. Okay, so the problem that we're having here is that problem that I described earlier. So you can see here that we're actually getting the logged message of the database before we've actually fully initialized the class. And we've actually been, or sorry, we fully initialized Firebase Firestore. So we're getting that error message. I might just temporarily here hook up something just so that we can actually see the Firestore stuff working offline. So I'm not a big liar pants on fire for our Twitter post. But obviously there's still a little bit of work I need to do about figuring out the structure of how to like hook these services together a little bit better in Stencil. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just do this.instance collection apps get. I'm going to do that inside of here. Do our then. And we're going to do the same thing. And we're just going to put our data inside of there. So now I'm just going to manually talk to our instance, get the collection of apps, because again, I really want to see this thing working offline. Okay, cool. So it does look like we have our list of applications coming back. So now what we need to do is let's go back into our apps page. And I think we just did a loop over all of the apps and then we put those apps on the page. So I think it was that simple. Get apps for each app. Okay, so we actually had to iterate over each one of these and then set them to an actual array with the data. So that was kind of an interesting thing that we ran into last week. And again, these are all things that these are the reasons why you set up a service, so you can kind of deal with all these oddities, and you really just need to call this every single time you want to actually call your apps. Like I just do this, talk to my app service or my app model, and I talk to that, and then I get the list of apps, and then it just gets me the list of apps. How that happens behind the scenes is kind of the work of the service. So okay, so I need to do that same thing just so that we can see on our current screen all the list of the apps. I want to be able to see them on the console. So let's change this to say apps, and then we'll say data equals data app data. Okay. And then up here, let's just say data equals an empty array. Cool. So now we should have the exact same thing that we had before. It's just going to now run through each one of why SpongeBob, why? Cannot read. Oh, duh. Oh, amateur hour. Okay. So now we have the same thing that we had before. It's going out, it's getting our Firebase apps from Firestore, and then now it's actually listing them in the console. So we can see that that is working. Now what we want to taste. Oh God, can you tell I'm hungry? I'm just ready. I'm ready, guys. I'm ready to like show you guys the offline functionality so that we can go get dinner. Okay, so here we have the list of apps. Let's see what happens when we disconnect our internet. So if you go into your device toolbar here, we should be able to switch this guy to mobile. And then right here, there's an online offline toggle. So this is super helpful. So if you've never used, or if you're not like a power user of dev tools, there's a great resource over on Code School. There's a free Code School Dev Tools. So I'll give the link in the description. This one has a really nice like dev tools. Code School is like one of our favorite premier learning resources. It's where we go to brush up on all the new Angular and all that kind of stuff when it comes out. These guys have a really fun way of breaking down courses and concepts into like 2-minute videos and then having you put that stuff to use. So we are non-spawn, but could be spawn. So you mean, Code School, and we could make something beautiful happen. But they are really well. If you like scripted stuff that is also very fun and is really engaging, then Code School is the right place. And they've got a wonderful DevTools tutorial that you can run through. And again, I'll throw the link in the description and as well as in the chat right now. So feel free to head on over and take this if you want a deep dive. But what we're going to use is this little offline toggle. What we can do is change this from like mid-tier, which is like a mid-level phone on like decent 3G network, a low-tier mobile phone, which is like a crappy Moto G on 3G or edge signal, and then there's the offline mode. And so we're going to flip ours into offline, and then we're going to refresh and see what happens. And if we've done everything right, I would really hope. No. Okay. So the reason why our application isn't going to load here is because we're not actually using the service worker. So what we need to do is kill our build process. And if we head on back into our package.json, why is this red? Import app service. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. Oh, yeah, duh. I already fixed you, app service. Stop being a cranky pants. Okay. So this is already fixed. It's just still showing error. Okay. So if we head on over to our package, they give us this nice little command, dev with SW or service worker. And we're going to go ahead and use that. So let's do npm run dev with service worker. And that's going to run a local host, but this time it's going to actually include the service worker. And hopefully, so if we want to check this out, we can actually head to application here, and then we can go to service workers, and we can see the service workers that are running on the page. It doesn't look like our service worker actually is running as it said it should be. Oh, there we go. Register service worker unknown error when fetching the script. Well, that's wonderful. Okay, well, luckily there are other means to figuring this out. So what we did last week was we hooked our other app up to Firebase Deploy to deploy our application. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy over our Firebase configuration files. So my Firebase RC, my Firebase JSON, my Firestore indexes. I'm going to copy all of those things. Let's go and copy. And then I'm going to paste those over here in the root. And I forget, they actually don't let you copy from project to project. So let's reveal these guys in Explorer. Okay, Firebase rules, Firebase RC. Okay, I'm fired. All right. So now we're going to jump into our other project. Holy moly. Ionic PWA toolkit. And I'm going to paste them in here. Awesome. Okay. So now that I've got these files in the project, now that I got these guys in here, I'm going to actually do my Npm Run Deploy. Oops, no. Firebase Deploy. So if you didn't see this from last video, basically we went about hooking into our Madness Labs PWA project. We hooked into Firebase, and then we hooked into Firebase storage, and then queried down a bunch of apps, also set up some functionality to actually add an app. Then we kind of put it into a service, and then we deployed it actually out to Firebase. And so that's what I'm doing here is I'm basically just setting up the deploy stuff again, and then I just deployed the project. So now I should be able to view it out in the browser, like this is actually running online. Ah, perfect. And you can see here that it says, hey, a new version is available. So that means that we should have our service worker working, which is good. I'm still getting that collection of undefined, so I probably want to kill that just in case that's going to cause some problems. So let me do that. Let's go into our home page, and we're just gonna like take this out. Well, let's just comment it out for right now. And then we're going to run that Firebase deploy again, and that's going to deploy a new version out to this link here. Sweetness. And just for safety's sake, I'm going to go into my application tab and I'm going to clear my storage just to make sure that my service worker and nothing is like caching something that's old and shouldn't be there. Like that shouldn't be there. Why are you undefined? Ooh, what? Try to deploy again. Let's see what happens. Okay. Now let's empty cache and hard reload. Why? Why you're not there anymore? Oh my god, I'm so terrible. See, I'm telling you, it's today. Okay, so again, in our last project, I'm so spoiled by the stuff that I set up sometimes. So in our last video, I think I showed how to set up a deploy command in order to like automatically build out the project. So I actually need to do that again. So down here, inside of my scripts in my package.json, I'm going to do deploy, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a npm run build. So it's going to build the project, and then I'm going to do and Firebase deploy. So now what I can do is just do npm run deploy, and then that's going to run a build of our application. So the reason why I'm not seeing my changes up on Firebase like an idiot is because of the fact that I don't have my this didn't actually build the JavaScript files as it was supposed to. It's just sitting in the uncompiled file, and I'm expecting it to just magically work. So by setting up this nice little script command in our package, we can now do run deploy, and then that's going to run the build process here, stencil build pre-render, and then it's going to deploy it to Firebase. Okay, so now, holy moly, today has been a struggle. Okay, so now we're going to see an error. Oh my god. Firebase is not defined. Firebase is not defined. Firebase, hey, is not defined. So let's see what we can do about that. So let's check out our elements here. Okay, so I think maybe what this is it's the pre-render. I've had problems with this pre-render before, and maybe it's just me. So I'm just going to do, instead of npm run build, I'm going to do stencil build. Like I said, this is just in my personal experience. I've not had very great luck with pre-render. I used it on a current project that we had. I tried to pre-render when I had like GraphJS, I think it was, GraphJS, ChartJS, that's what it's, ChartJS. So I tried that out on a project that we had, and I was never able to get pre-render working with it. Yeah, see, now we're good. So it's probably, again, just like our Madness Labs PWA not working correctly. It is definitely user error. I have no doubt about that. It's just a matter of somebody pointing out how I'm dumb, and then I'll fix it. Okay, so now we have a service worker working. We've got our database connecting. We've got our apps coming back. So wow, slowest Madcast ever. But the results will hopefully be worth it here. So now I'm going to click phonetically. Okay, so now I'm going to switch this toggle from online to offline. And now if everything has gone well, holy moly, if everything has gone well, we will be able to refresh here. And boom, look at that. Even though we have no internet connection right now, I can actually still navigate around my application. I can do all my stuff, and you can see that when I go back, boom, I go back to my home page, I'm still getting the full list of apps. And if you want a little bit of proof in the pudding here, because I know it's tough when you don't see UI elements, so let's go ahead and let's turn this back online here. And let's go ahead and put a card on the screen with the application name in there at least. So we're going to do ion card. And inside of here, we're just going to put, let's do this dot apps. Oh yeah, I got to get my apps working again. That's right. Okay, so this is where I keep getting stuck here. How is the best way to initialize this stuff and to not worry about calling my class 100 times? So app, when I initialize app, instance doesn't exist yet. So I have to like wait until database is done doing what it's doing. So what I probably want to do that's definitely something to think on. So I'm going to look a little bit more into doing something like that. Because again, I feel like I'm close to something, but I'm not really 100% sure about how I want to scale this structure yet. So I might do a follow-up at some point, or maybe next week I'll address like kind of the direction that we decided to take with how we would set up Firestore. Because again, like before last week, we had it just kind of slapped in the header. Now we're initializing it with this nice class, which is way better. But we kind of still have a weirdness of like every time we're calling it, it's initializing. And so we kind of need it to just like launch once when the application starts. We launch and connect into our database. So let me try one more thing here. I want to put it back in this file. So we're going to start our database again here. And let's do npm start. I was planning on making this cast short, but it looks like it's going to be a long one. At least we got an application up on Firebase. We've got data coming down even when it's offline. So I think we've achieved the goal, I guess, in a certain sense. But I definitely feel like it's been a drag. I was hoping to show a lot more. Help me out here, Firebase. No, I think what's happening is our cache, because I tried to cache it earlier, I think it might be messed up. Nope, no, it's just because that thing, app, duplicate app. So let's just Google it, man. Let's just do this. I mean, again, these are the joys of tuning into one of our Madness casts. If no Firebase apps.length. Initialize app. I already tried that. Kenny. Okay. Yeah, because instance doesn't exist either way. Okay. So I think I see the final fix here. So what we need to do is we need to say if there is no Firebase apps length, then initialize, and then it's going to set this instance equal to Firestore. Otherwise, Firebase is already launched, so what we need to do is just set this .firebase Firestore to the instance. Now, either way, whether it's been initiated already or it hasn't, we're always going to get an instance and set it to our database service class. So hopefully, let's take this guy out of here and let's go back in our database. Let's remove let's kind of keep this. I'll keep it in my clipboard here. So let's hope that that is the fix we're looking for. These are the fix you're looking for. So, okay. So hopefully this is what we're looking for. Okay, well, we don't have an error, so that's good. Errors are bad. Okay. So let's go ahead and try to do our app service again. And I'll paste in our code that we had. And I'll just take this little bit right here. And paste that. Oh no, why have you forsaken me? Okay, so let's make something called apps, and we're just going to say any for right now. And we don't need this instance, none of this stuff. Let's get rid of that. So now we can say this dot apps. Actually, sorry, apps. This dot apps equals apps dot for each. This dot apps equals, no wait, I don't know why we need this dot apps equals. So we just need apps for each of the apps. Each one of them is an app. We're going to go through and we're going to say this dot apps, and we're going to append app dot data. Okay, there we go. Now we're making sense of stuff. So just to make sure everything's working, we're going to console log out our apps. No, this dot apps. So once again, just making sure that we are actually hooked up to Firebase and that we're not having any issues. And this dot apps is not iterable. This dot apps is not iterable. It's probably because we need to set it to an empty array. Shazam! Okay, so there we go. We've actually got a list of apps. And now again, what's really cool is we're hooking up into an app service. And then our app service is hooked up into our database service. So pretty clean so far. Again, taking this stuff out is probably probably a good idea. So let's take this guy, and what we can do is that same thing. Let's return a new promise. And note that I'm using these parens around here, and that's just so that we can call a class without having to like make it on a new line or save it to a variable. So we'll say new promise. Actually, we might not even need those with ES6. It might be just in an old habit. Okay, so we want a new promise, and we want to resolve and reject, and probably, so now we're going to say thinking, should I use async in this case? We'll save it for another video. We'll save it for another video. Okay, so now that we've got our apps and we're returning a promise, we're going to do dot then. We're then going to get I saved the wrong data, didn't I? There we go. Okay, so now we're going to do that dot then. So I don't know, I'm a bit of a perfectionist at times, and code is just one of those areas where like I have to have everything just so. Okay, so we're going to say apps for each, and then what we're going to do is we're going to set an array. We're going to say naming stuff, man, naming stuff. Okay, so we're going to say var apps are is a empty array. Then we're going to say apps are equals apps are, and actually, since we're doing it this way, we don't need to recall the whole apps array and everything. Let's just use push and push this into our array. Okay, so now I'm doing like everything inside of, okay, yes. Okay, cool. So now I'm like, I'm using, I'm doing all of the transforming of the data, so making that array. inside of the actual service itself. So that again, I'm not having to do this inside of our controllers. Probably not the best place to go about doing that kind of stuff. So then when I'm done, I'm going to resolve, and I'm going to resolve the apps. So I'm going to hand back just the apps. And then down here, I probably want to do a .catch and then get the error event. And I want to then reject and pass through the error. Okay, so now I've kind of refactored a little bit and wrote it a little bit more in depth. So this is going to return a promise the exact same way. For each apps. Oh yeah, that's fine. So now it's going to return apps, but this time we're going to say this apps equals apps. And so this time, now apps should just be the list of data. It should just be the raw. Did I save my apps? Yes, yes. Pull that inside. Maybe that has something to do with it. Oh, duh. Apps are not apps. There we go. Okay. Okay, so now you can see that when we call app.all, it then is going to return just the list, the array of apps. So a lot cleaner implementation. And then now I don't have to worry about having all that messy stuff inside of my controller. So now I want to go down here and I want to iterate over these. This.apps.map, and each one is going to be an app, and we're going to return instantly. And then down here, let's put our Ionic card, and we want to get from one of these guys maybe the title, so h2 and app.title. And that should be it. Content, card. So it's not showing up, so let's see why. I am on my home page. I've got my apps. What's the dealio? Ah, apps. Okay. So because I didn't set that to a state item, awesome. So because I didn't set that to the state, it was only being set when the class was called. And so whenever the data came back from Firestore, it actually didn't cause the render to fire. So this very much goes back into the Q&A question that, that I did after last cast. So again, when we're setting stuff to the state, that is what causes it to fire a render. So in this case, because I hadn't had that set to state, it wasn't actually firing a render whenever the app data came back from Firestore. So now you can see we have our list of app names. So I feel pretty good about that, I guess. Again, could be prettier, could have a lot more stuff, but I kind of went off in all kinds of different directions. So, what are you gonna do? Okay, so I'm gonna run deploy again. So Npm Run Deploy, and that's gonna run my awesome little deploy command I made. And that's gonna get it out in Firebase, and then we can test offline again, just to make sure that everything is a-okay. Okay, so now we've got it out online, so I should be able to refresh over here. And if the service worker thing's working, I should get a toast message, I think. Okay, cool. So now you can see that I've got my new version. It's showing me the list of apps. And if I click from online to offline, Firebase is just automatically going to figure it out. So because of our manifest file, because of the way that Stencil is built around being a PWA, it's automatically going to start the service worker and keep our app running even if we have no internet connection. And then Firebase, because we did the inside of our database.ts, because of the fact that we actually ran this enable persistence method on our when we instantiated our Firestore instance, it's automatically caching the data on the actual user's device. So that's what allows us to use it offline. Even when we have no internet connection, it still has the data on the device, so it serves it up automatically. So this is a super cool feature, and I can't wait to roll it out into more of our applications. So this has been a great place for us to kind of test and play around with this idea a little bit more, set up some of these services. And again, we're going to be syncing them to that Madness Labs PWA repo that I've got a link in the description for. So if you guys want to actually jump in there and start to play around with these things, feel free. And let's see. The last thing I want to show you guys is like where the data goes. So first off, I guess it'd be cool to like maybe if we tried to go to our website and show that it is indeed offline. So like it is loading this website completely from your local storage. You can even see the network's got a little exclamation point. It can't get out to the internet, and yet we still have our application with all of our apps. So AJ, there's your answer. Like literally it's just the change of one simple little flag and your app is just automatically wired up. It's all working. I believe the ad should work as well. So like it should store it and then automatically sync whenever it gets back online. As always, head on over to the documentation. This page is very, very simple. It looks like they've only got like listen to offline data and then like instantiating it or like configuring it. So it looks fairly simple. I think they've taken care of most of the hard work of syncing and all that kind of stuff so that you don't have to worry about it. So that's super useful. And it made it very easy for us to just like quickly cover it. Maybe if this becomes a thing, we start doing a little bit more of the Firebase stuff as we go forward. We'll get into some of the more in-depth stuff, but out of the box, it's just as simple as adding that extra enable persistence method when you call Firestore, and it automatically does this awesome magic for you. And we can even test it out on our live Firebase instance. So, woohoo! So again, the last thing here is I want to go into the application tab, and we should be able to see this stuff. So if we head into our storage section under our dev tools, we can actually go in here and you can see the actual database that it's created. So there's a session storage. Usually this is for like session, or like every time you enter a browser tab, it starts a session. When you close it, it closes the session. But this is actually going to be probably either web SQL or it's going to be, in this case, an indexed DB. And we can see our target documents here. We can see our apps. So we can see our data. So if you've never dove into this application tab, it's super, super fun. There's a ton of stuff in here to actually like show you the nitty gritty of like what's being stored, your service workers that are running. And then if you ever like have to like clear out your storage because some file is like cached way too hard, then like this is the tab to do it. But yeah, so there's where your kind of database is stored. So if you wanted to go and check that out or see what they're actually storing on your computer, there's the place to go do it. So awesome. Well, I think that was a pretty complete cast. We've been going for probably like an hour and 40 minutes. Yeah, hour and 40 minutes or so. So I'd say that's a pretty complete example. I know we started out a little slow and we got sidetracked by a lot of different things. I'll try to keep on point a little bit more in these casts. And I'm really hoping that we can get more engaged with you guys. So I know I was a little slow to the chat today just because I was so focused on trying to fix all these bugs and all these things that I was running into. But that's what happens. This is development. It's a dirty field. It's a dirty field. So it's very it's not unusual to have to go and Google things and to have to constantly fix things that are breaking. And especially when you're working on a lot of these cutting edge softwares like Stencil, you know, they're making breaking changes and things are changing all the time. So it just takes a while to like get yourself set up. So hopefully, again, these are really useful. Shows you guys the honesty of like, this is really what being a developer is about. It's not like knowing all the answers and instantly having something. It's more just about playing and trying different things, breaking things until you figure out where you're kind of going. So yeah, I think we've got a pretty good setup now. We've got a database class that we've scaled. We've got a app class that we've scaled that uses our database class. We're connected into Firestore. We're working offline. We're deployed on Firebase. And all of these with all of my long-winded, exasperated, you know, explanations. So, I mean, I think we're doing pretty good. So I think next week we're going to make it a point to like get a little bit back on the actual development of the website, and we're going to speed things along a little bit. I want to show you guys like how we actually go at light speed. These casts have been really long-winded explanations on a bunch of different things, which is super cool. But I think next week it's going to be more zoned in on like, okay, here's the prototype that we've got. We need to slam this together. Let's take all the stuff that we've built. Let's start putting it to use, and let's get this application together. So hopefully we can see you guys there. And then also this week we'll be putting out a Twitter poll on like kind of what else you guys would like to see. So we've gotten some suggestions for like the Firebase stuff, Firestore. We also had a thing for Stripe. So like we are open for ideas about what you guys want to see us cover. And as always, links in the description for the project, the last video. Please like, subscribe. You know, share this with people. Again, the series is kind of aimed for like low, mid-level people that are kind of, you know, or even higher level. I mean, it's for, we're for everybody here at Madness Labs. So like, you know, feel free to share. And if this is something that has been useful for you, please consider heading on over to our Patreon so that we can help scale out more resources to help more lovely people like yourselves. So I think that'll do it for this Madness Cast, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and see you guys next week for a little bit faster paced video. All right, thanks guys. Peace out.